Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Thank you, Erica, and welcome everybody to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm your host, Josh Taylor, in tonight for Bob Pompiani, but it's good to talk to you on a Sunday after a week where a lot of things went down, especially with the Pirates. The week that they had going, they had won 6 of 9 games. Going into this afternoon's game with Minnesota, they had already won the first 2 games. They won their 3rd straight series at home with a chance to really put together a good stretch. They could have finished 7 out of their last 10. That would have been their best run since the very beginning of the season. And it all came crashing down when it got to extra innings. And the thing I look at with this game against Minnesota this afternoon, where the Pirates lose 11-5 in 10 innings, by the way, you know that's not a normal story of someone hitting 3 batters in an inning. It wasn't because he had a bad day. It's because he had bad intentions and he carried them out. But that just illustrates just how badly this whole thing fell apart for the Pirates in extra innings. And it was that one problem they could not seem to overcome. And I think if you're looking at what this team could do in the near or maybe further down the road future this season, the bullpen is the thing you're going to look at and say, can they fix this in order to get over the hump? Now, I say this with full understanding that yesterday was a bullpen game. Carmen Mlodzinski started. He went to 1 2/3 innings. Luis Ortiz came in after him. He pitched 4 1/3. So you had a lot of guys being taxed in that bullpen yesterday. You had 4 guys that weren't available today. David Bednar pitched the first 2 games of this series, so he wasn't available for this one. They did use Aroldis Chapman, but he only gave them 1 inning, so it became one of those things where they really didn't have any arms left, and Ben Heller was the only other guy available. He'd only made 1 start this season before today, and it just did not work out the way they wanted. But I'll say this again. In a game where there were so many things stacked against the Pirates, they had an answer for all of them, except one thing. And that one thing is something that they need to address very, very soon. But I want to hear your thoughts on this game. I want to hear your thoughts on a couple other things as well. 412-575-2600. That is the number to give us a call. Or you can shoot me a tweet over at Josh Taylor HD. We will take a break. When we come back, we'll have our tweet of the night. I want to get into Rowdy Tellez, his turnaround this season. I want to get into Mitch Keller and the way he's looked in his last 6 starts. He solidified himself as the veteran guy in this pitching staff. We'll get into those things. And we'll talk Steelers OTAs and minicamp too when we come back. Stick around. Welcome back. Time for our GMC Sierra tweet of the night. Comes from OptaStats. This is a pretty cool one. Today's game between the Twins and Pirates is the second in MLB history in which both starting leadoff hitters entered the game with 300-plus career home runs. Carlos Santana and Andrew McCutchen. And the last one before that was in 1964. It was 60 years ago. Eddie Matthews and Duke Snider. That is a pretty cool stat. Another cool stat from that game. The 2 in this game, they're former teammates. Carlos Santana was just here not too long ago. So that's another fun wrinkle to that part. But, yeah, getting back to that Pirates and Twins game from earlier today and just looking at the details from it all and trying to parse all of it. And I know we talked a lot about the bullpen. We got a tweet here from Ryan who says the Pirates will be well advised to look at some of the relief pitchers other teams have DFA'd recently. Now, we say all that, but there's caveat emptor when it comes to guys that have been DFA'd. Maybe there's a reason they were DFA'd. So there's something you look into. But I think the spirit of what Ryan is saying makes sense. They have to look at every possible option, turn over every stone, look at every possible, outlet they can use to bring in a pitcher or 2. I say at least 1 or 2 arms that can help this bullpen. And not the back half of it. I think the back end has really started to solidify itself. Colin Holderman has never been a concern for me. I thought David Bednar, not having a lot of time in spring training to get himself refined, was going to take a little bit of time this season to get himself together, and it looks like he has. And even Aroldis Chapman is starting to figure it out. So can they get guys to hold the lead in those middle innings, or if they get into a situation like today where they got to go to extra innings and their good guys aren't available, or their best guys, I should say, aren't available, can they find guys that can hold leads or keep them in games as the game goes along? Let's get started with Chuck in Uniontown. Got to have Chuck on the show. Chuck, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Thanks, Josh. Once again, good evening.
Appreciate you.
It's what bothers me is that there's been so many opportunities for the Pirates to get over the hump to sweep, and something that they didn't do since first series of the season. And that would have been so good, not only statistically, but psychologically. That, Josh, how much of a big psychological boost you're going into a dangerous series in St. Louis and in Denver after that. To have gotten to 32-33, one game under 500. Mm-hmm. Psychologically, it would have been good. But now you were saying about the tweaking the bullpen. Yes, I think what Ben Sherrington needs to do, he needs to be a Jim Rutherford and not a Brian Hextall. He needs to go out and check what's there available, because unfortunately what was supposed to be a strength of the team has now turned into a very serious problem area, and they've got to fix it, because you particularly when you're on the road, if you get leads like this, you've got to hold them like that. And I would think nothing less than a 3-3 road trip is acceptable, with two of those, with maybe at least one of those wins, perhaps two, coming in St. Louis. But what bothers me also is that I think that for two, the Reds and the Cardinals will improve their teams. I'm not sure that we will.
Appreciate the call, Chuck. And honestly, I love how you were talking about the approach to this upcoming week. I literally had this discussion last night with a good friend of mine, Greg Finley, my old producer from 93.7 The Fan. We were talking about how the pitching staff lined up for this week, because you had Jared Jones going today against Minnesota. You got Paul Skeens going Tuesday in St. Louis. You're going to see Mitch Keller. You're going to see Bailey Falter. And then when it comes back around toward the weekend, you're going to see Jared Jones again. You're going to see Paul Skeens again. So the thought of a 3-3 road trip, or maybe a 4-2 road trip, given the pitching matchups that you could get potentially in St. Louis and Denver, makes me feel very optimistic about this week. But then you look at the other thing you mentioned, can your bullpen hold leads on the road? I'm not even worried about this offense scoring runs right now, because in the past month, they're scoring 5+ runs a game. They're doing exactly what you would hope an offense to do. The starting pitching, we know how good they've been. They're doing exactly what you would expect a young pitching staff, and one that has the talent that they do to do. They're doing that part. Can you hold leads when you need to hold them in critical spots? That's when it becomes an issue. Kirk and Manor, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Evening again, Josh. How are you?
I'm good. How you been?
Good, thanks. How are you? How does your bullpen get depleted? A 9-inning game, which turned into a 10-inning game. And haven't any of these younger pitchers ever heard of Raleigh Fingers, Dave Justy, or Kent DeColvey? I'm just curious.
Probably not the first two. To be fair, I don't think they probably heard of the first two. I'm in my early 40s. I know those names. There's a chance these younger guys may not. But your point's well made. To answer your first question, the reason why they didn't have enough pitchers for this game is because they used a lot of them yesterday. That's something that we got to point out, and I talked about at the top of the show. Carmen Mlodzinski started as an opener yesterday and gave them an inning and 2/3. And Luis Ortiz, they completely used him because he pitched 4 1/3, so he wasn't available. Then the guys that you would normally see in the situations where they were with the one run lead, only one of them was available, and that was Aroldis Chapman. You didn't have Colin Holderman. You didn't have David Bednar. So those guys aren't there, because Bednar pitched the last 2 games. So it comes down to they used a lot of their resources in the first 2 games, and I think the reasoning behind it is a pretty good one, because if you know you have Jared Jones going in that 3rd game, and if Jared Jones can give you 6 good innings, maybe 7 good innings, maybe you're not so hard-pressed to get to your bullpen. Well, he had a complicated first inning, and he only went 5, so it makes that job just a little bit harder. Then you have a situation where, well, you gave up a run late, and now you got to go into extra innings, and that makes that job even harder. So by the time they got to the 10th inning, they really had no choice. They had to go to Ben Heller. I mean, I heard the arguments of going to a position player, but is the result going to change? Probably not. It's that risk you take when you go with a certain game plan, when you go with a certain type of ideology. There's always something that can counter it if something goes wrong. There is no plan that is foolproof, no plan that is bulletproof, and you saw the results of that today. Martin and Plum, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Josh, I think you do a fantastic job.
Appreciate you.
I just wanted to say that I love the Pirates. They're my first love, but since Dunning took over the team, it's like I'm jaded, especially since last year I gave up on them after they traded Carlos Santana. After they did that, I just couldn't bear to watch them anymore. You know, it makes me sad. It really does, because Dunning doesn't want to spend his money.
It took the Carlos Santana trade to tick you off. That was the thing. I know people that were frustrated after 2016 because they didn't improve the team. I'm surprised you lasted that long to Carlos Santana. I keep having this conversation when it comes to people and their frustrations with management, because you keep hearing them say, well, ownership doesn't want to spend money on the team. Well, I bring up two names that are really important as counter arguments to that statement. Mitch Keller and Brian Reynolds. These were two guys that we talked about when this subject came up. Hey, you're going to have to try to find a way to extend these guys. These guys are going to have to find some way to keep them here. Nobody's got to spend money to do it. Well, he did. They spent the money and they kept these guys here. And Mitch Keller, to his credit, is living up to it. Maybe even ahead of it. He might be even ahead of what he was expected to do based on the value of his contract. Brian Reynolds, for a good chunk of the season, not so much. But it stands to reason. These are two guys that we thought the team wouldn't invest in. And they did. One's making good on it, one isn't. But that's the risk you take when you decide who you're going to pay and who you're going to let go. But to their credit, they paid those two guys. We could talk about the ownership back and forth all we want to. But when it came time to pay those two guys in particular, guys that are key parts of this team, they paid to keep them. Got to give them credit for that at least. Got to take another break. We'll wrap up when we come back. Stick around. Right now, let's head over to the news desk. That's where Erica Stanish is, and she has a preview of KDKA News at 11. Good evening, Erica.
Yeah, hey, Josh, here's what we're working on. 3 people from Butler County, including a teenager, were killed in a crash in Crawford County. We were at a vigil tonight held in their memory, and we'll have more on how family and friends are remembering them. Plus, turning grief into something good, how family members and co-workers are honoring the memory of a former Jefferson Hills police officer. And we're looking at a cool down before temperatures heat back up again later in the week. We'll have what you need to know ahead of the new work week. All of that and so much more coming up on KDKA News at 11. We'll see you then.
All right, thank you, Erica. In addition to everything Erica talked about, on the sports side of things, we'll have Pirates and Twins highlights. We'll also talk about PGA final round of the Memorial. If you watched it earlier today on KDKA, we'll have highlights from that as well. Plus, we got some Pirates minor league news to discuss. Big news in the NBA. So that's something else to keep an eye on too. Potentially back-to-back national championship head coach Dan Hurley could be headed to the NBA. We'll tell you what team is making that overture to him. All of that's coming up during KDKA News at 11. Got a few minutes left in show. Let's go to Dave on the north side. Dave, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Davis, it seems like they don't have no confidence in him. He should have been batting in the 8th instead of McDowell.
Who?
Because they could have brought up 2 pitch hitters. There was 2 guys.
I'm sorry, Dave.
Henry Davis. Okay. Hayes was available.
Okay, Henry Davis. Yeah, here's the thing. I have a hard time trying to parse the guys at the lower part of the lineup and trying to figure out which options are viable with the guys that are coming off the bench. Because, especially at the catcher position. Because Henry Davis, well, you've seen the results there, although he did manage to draw a walk and score a run in the 5th inning in that big transformative inning. Yasmani Grandal has not been the guy who's been advertised. And this is considering the fact that 4 or 5 years ago, Yasmani Grandal was one of the best hitters at the catcher position in the league. He hasn't been what he's been advertised. Michael A. Taylor, if he's on your bench, he's not really a pinch hit option. He's a pinch run option. That's exactly what he was today. So it's hard to look at and say, well, what options did they have here? They really don't have many. I don't think it's fair to say, well, this guy can come in for this guy, because the truth of the matter is they're still trying to find more consistent guys with this offense. As much as I've talked about how this offense is scoring more runs, It's really for a couple different reasons. One, because Nick Gonzalez has been called up, and he's been one of the best hitters in baseball since he got here. Two, Rowdy Tellez raises average like 40 points in 1 week by going 9 for 18 or 9 for 20 in the last handful of games here. That's another reason why. And then Ke'Bryan Hayes is healthy. Just a few small things have happened to make this offense more productive. But there's still other holes that they need to fill. They could probably use another outfield bat. They could probably use more help at first base as far as production there, even though Rowdy Tellez may be starting to figure it out. But the truth of the matter is, we can't really expect for them to reach into the cupboard and pull something out when the cupboard, productively speaking, is pretty much bare. I don't think it's kind of hard to create that expectation of something that's not there. I can't create an expectation when I haven't seen something that helps me to create that expectation. I can't expect Michael A. Taylor to just figure it out and start going on a tear like he did the first 5 games of the season. I just don't think there's enough evidence there to suggest that I can have confidence in that kind of concept. But we are out of time. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for your calls. Thanks for your tweets. It's you guys that make this show great. For our producer, Jeremiah Miller, and our team here at KDKA, I'm Josh Taylor saying thank you for watching. Make the switch to KDKA for KDKA News at 11. And after that, it's the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown with Will Graves and Jason Mackey. We'll see you over there. Thanks again.